The drifter came up the lane to the boarding house at the hour the supper bell had just been rung, and Della Cope was at the back step setting the last pan of cornbread on the longboard to cool when she heard his boot on the loose gravel and turned and saw him standing at the gate with his hat in his hand. He did not push the gate. He stood at it. "You looking for a room?" "I am. I have one. I have not got but a little coin, ma'am. I will work it." Della set the cloth she was holding on the corner of the board. She wiped her hands on the front of her apron. She walked from the back step around the side of the house to the gate, and she did not hurry, because she had been running the boarding house at the south end of the crossroads alone for 4 years and had stopped hurrying for any man at her gate the 3rd year. "What's your name?" "Sam Tilden." "Della Cope. Come around to the kitchen porch. I will not talk to a man at my gate." Before we continue, if stories like this mean something to you, hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. He came around to the kitchen porch. He was a tall, lean man of about 33. Dust on the brim of a brown hat held in his hand, a faded blue work shirt with the sleeves rolled past the elbow, dark trousers worn at the knee, a small canvas roll over his shoulder with a steel hand plane and a wood chisel handle just visible through the seam, a tin cup hanging from the strap. His face was the gray pink of a man who had been walking in hard sun without enough to drink. He had a steady gray eye, and he held a look without making anything of it. Della Cope was 28 that summer, the only boarding house keeper between the crossroads and the South Fork, daughter of a woman who had kept the same house before her and who had been in the ground at the small cemetery on the rise for 4 summers. She had 4 men under her roof at any given week. A teamster named Hollis Ware, a freight clerk named Felix Mack, who came up on Tuesdays and Fridays, an older drover named Toby Penrose, who took the room at the end of the upstairs hall when he was between drives, and an empty 4th room she kept for any decent passing hand who could pay or work. The empty room was the back room off the kitchen, the smallest in the house, and it had once been her mother's sewing room, and held a narrow iron-framed cot and a single wooden chest under the window, and nothing else. "You eat at the table at 6, she said. "Breakfast is at 5:30. You wash at the pump out back. I will not have boots above the 2nd step. If you spit, it will be in the yard. The room is $1.20 the week with breakfast and supper. If you have no coin, you can work it off at the rate of 15 cents a day for carpenter work on the house, which needs it, and 20 cents a day for help with the heavy chores. You will not enter the kitchen unless I have asked you to. You will not go upstairs at all. You have any objection to any of that? I have none. What's your trade? Carpentry, some smithing. I shoe a horse if pressed," she thought. "I have a porch step that has been loose since May." I noticed. She looked at him. "You looking at my porch step from the gate?" I noticed the 2nd tread. "The back room is yours," she said. "You can have it for $1 a week with breakfast and supper for the 1st month, against work on the house. After the month, we will settle proper. That suits." Della stood on the kitchen porch and looked at him a moment. He stood at the bottom of the step with his hat in his hand, and his canvas roll over his shoulder and his face composed and unhurried. He did not press. He did not ask her again. He had a steady gray eye and a small dust of red road clay on his boots, and he had noticed the 2nd tread of her porch from the gate, and she had not had a man notice the 2nd tread of her porch in 4 years. Sam Tilden took the back room that evening. He set the canvas roll on the wooden chest under the window. He set the hat on the wall peg by the door. He went out to the pump at the back of the yard and washed his face and his neck and the dust off his forearms, and came back in and stood on the kitchen porch with his hands in his pockets until Della came out and told him to come around to the front and sit at the table. The 4 other boarders were already at the table. Della ran the kitchen the way her mother had run it before her, which was that supper was served at 6 and was on the table by 5:55, and any boarder not in his chair by then ate what was left after the others were done. Hollis Ware, the teamster, was at the near end of the bench on the right. Felix Mack, the freight clerk, was beside him. Toby Penrose, the old drover, was at the far end on the left in the chair he had been sitting in for 9 years. The 4th chair at the table was the empty one across from Tobe at the near end on the left, and Della nodded Sam to it. "Boys," she said, "this is Sam Tilden. He's in the back room a month against work on the house." Hollis Ware looked up from his plate. Hollis was 46, broad in the shoulder, sun-darkened to the line where his shirt collar sat. A teamster who had been at Della's table for 6 years and had decided in the 2nd year that he would marry her, and had been waiting since for her to decide the same. He looked at Sam. He did not greet him. "Carpenter," Sam said. "I heard." Hollis returned to his plate. Toby Penrose was 63, white-haired, lean. He nodded at Sam from his end. "Mr. Tilden, Mr. Penrose." Felix Mack was 31 and had been at Della's table on Tuesdays and Fridays for 2 years, and had no opinion about Sam Tilden that he was prepared to share at a first supper. He nodded once. He returned to his plate. The supper was beef stew and cornbread and butter and a small bowl of green beans from the kitchen garden. Della sat at the far end on the right opposite Tobe, in the chair her mother had sat in. She did not eat first. She watched the table eat for the first 3 or 4 bites, and then she ate, in the way of a woman who had been keeping a table for other people long enough that she had trained the order out of her hands. Sam Tilden ate slowly. He did not crowd the bread. He did not finish the stew in 3 bites. He buttered the cornbread the small, careful way of a man who had been raised somewhere to butter bread carefully. Della watched him do it without watching him do it. Hollis Ware watched him do it and did not make a face about it. Toby Penrose watched him do it, and the smallest corner of his mouth moved once and went still again. That was the first supper. Sam was at the porch step at first gray light the next morning. The loose second tread was nailed flat by the time Della came out at 5:15 with the kettle. He had a small stack of fresh, pale wood shavings caught at the edge of the step from a plane he had used on the board. 2 bright new nails driven into the worn silvered wood, and the cedar pry he had whittled out of a scrap from her wood pile lying on the bottom step beside his tools. "Mornin', mornin'." You did not have to do that before breakfast. The step was loose. She did not say anything more about it. She set the kettle on the porch rail and went back inside. The first gray light caught the new nails in the worn wood and held there a long moment, and Della stood at the kitchen window with her hand on the sill and looked at the second tread and did not let her face do anything. He moved on through her house in the same way for 2 weeks. He patched the sag in the porch roof on the 3rd day. He pulled the warped board off the south wall of the shed and put a fresh one on by the end of the 1st week. He set a new latch on the gate on the 2nd Monday. He did not ask her what to do next. He looked at the house in the morning and chose the next thing on his own and did it. By the end of the 2nd week, the boarding house looked the way it had looked in her mother's last summer, and Della had not asked him for any of it, and she had not commented on any of it, and he had not announced any of it. The slow geographical shift was in the cup. He had taken the tin cup at his place at the table on the first night from the far end of the row of cups on the kitchen sideboard, because he had not known which cup was his. By the third night, he had a cup in mind. By the second week, his cup hung from the peg by the kitchen door instead of the sideboard, beside her own cup, on a peg Della had not designated for it, but on which the cup had appeared, and which she had not moved it down from. Hollis Ware noticed it on the Tuesday of the third week. He was at the table for noon dinner, which he did not usually take but had stopped in for, and he was looking at the row of pegs by the kitchen door when Della brought the platter in. Della, Hollis, that tin cup on the peg by the door beside yours. That's Sam's. I see that. She set the platter on the table. She did not look at the peg. She did not look at Hollis. You moved his cup beside yours. I did not move his cup. The cup is where the cup went. Hollis Ware nodded once, very slowly. He ate his dinner. He paid her for the noon dinner and left 20 cents extra in coin on the table beside his plate, which was a thing he had been doing since the second year, and which Della had at some point stopped commenting on because commenting on it would have made it a thing. He did not come to the table again that week. The town talk came up through Mrs. Iola Marsh, who at 59 had taken upon herself the moral standing of the south end of the crossroads, and who came to Della's kitchen porch on a Friday at noon with a covered basket and her gloves and her smile in place. "Della, dear, may I come in?" Iola did not wait to be invited. She came onto the porch. She set the basket on the kitchen rail. She looked at the row of pegs by the kitchen door. She looked at the cedar pry tool that had moved to a fresh new shelf inside the kitchen door beside Della's own tools. "You have a new boarder," Iola said. "I've had him since the last week in July. His name is Sam Tilden. He is a carpenter and a fair smith, and he has put my porch and my shed back on their feet for the cost of $1 a week and breakfast and supper. Hollis Ware spoke to me at the freight house on Wednesday." "Did he?" "He is concerned, Della. He has been at your table for 6 years. He has been a friend to you. He has. He's concerned that there's a man in your back room who was not there a month ago, and that the man's cup is on a peg beside your own, and that the man's tools are on a shelf inside your kitchen, and that he's been getting fixed what Hollis has been offering to fix for you for 6 years. Della picked up the cloth from the kitchen block and folded it once and set it back where it had been. She did not let her hands fidget. She had trained that out of herself a long time ago. "Iola," she said, "Hollis Ware is welcome at this table for the rest of his life. He has been a friend to me. He has never been a man I have asked for the porch step. He has been a man I have not refused at the porch step, which is not the same thing. Sam Tilden has been at my house 23 days. He fixed the porch step at first gray light on the second morning. He did not ask me whether to. He saw it from the gate the evening before. That is the kind of seeing I have not had at this house since my mother died. I am not putting his cup back on the sideboard, Iola. I am not, because there is no cause to." Iola's smile did not change. "You will lose Hollis. I will not lose Hollis. I never had Hollis. Hollis has been at this table because the table was here. He will be at someone's table by the spring. The freight clerk's sister at the crossroads has been after him for 2 years." Iola laughed once, very small. She did not stay long after that. She took the basket back. She paused at the porch step. The second tread is nailed flat. "It is. I noticed too." Iola went down the path. Della stood at the kitchen porch and watched the dust at her gloves settle, and did not let her face do anything until the buggy at the road had turned. The confrontation came on the Saturday after at the noon meal at the boarding house, the only meal of the week at which Della laid the longboard on the porch for sit-down trade as well as her own boarders, because Saturday at the crossroads brought farmers in. There were 9 men at the table at noon that Saturday, including her 4 boarders and 4 farmers and Hollis Ware, who had come back and had taken his place at the near end of the bench on the right. Hollis had a paper in his coat pocket. Della saw it when he sat down. She did not say anything about the paper. She set the platters on the table and sat at her end, and the noon meal went on the way. Saturday noon meals went on, with the farmers passing the bread and the boarders passing the platters, and the talk staying on the price of hay, and the freight schedule and the weather. Sam Tilden was at his place at the near end of the bench on the left, across from Tobe Penrose. He ate his cornbread the small, careful way. He did not enter the talk. It was at the coffee that Hollis Ware took the paper from his coat and set it on the table. "Della," he said. "Hollis, I've been thinking on something." He looked at the paper. The other men at the table set their cups down. They did not all look at the paper. 2 of the farmers did. Felix Mack did. Toby Penrose did not. Toby Penrose looked at Sam. "I have been thinking," Hollis said, "that this boarding house has been a thing run by a woman alone for 4 years, and that this is not a thing that need go on forever. I have been at this table 6 years. I have paid my board for 6 years. I have not asked of you what a man might reasonably ask after 6 years, because I did not want to put you on a clock." He looked up at her. "I would like to put my name on this paper. I would like to put your name beside mine. I would like to come and go through the front door and not at the supper bell. I am asking you in front of the table because I would not have you answer me in private to a paper that is not in private." Della Cope set her coffee cup on the table. She looked at Hollis. She did not look at Sam. She did not look at the paper. "Hollis Ware," she said, "I have known you 6 years. You have been a kind man at my table. You have left 20 cents extra in coin beside your plate for 4 of those 6 years. You have never noticed the second tread of my porch step. You have never noticed the warped board on the south wall of my shed. You have never asked me what was broken on my house. You have brought me a paper in front of 9 men and asked me to answer it in front of 9 men, which is the only way you would have known how to ask me, because asking me in private would have required asking me what is broken in my house, and you have never asked me that. The answer is no. I will not put my name on your paper. I will not put my name on any paper that comes to me with 9 men at the table to witness it before I have been asked alone." Hollis Ware did not move. The other men at the table did not move. "Hollis," she said, "you are welcome at this table for the rest of your life. You will eat at this table for as long as you wish to eat at this table. I will not be the one who takes the friendship away. But the answer to the paper is no." Hollis Ware folded the paper. He put it back in his coat. He picked up his coffee. He looked once across the table at Sam Tilden, who had not moved at all and who was holding his coffee cup with his hand around the bowl of it, in the way of a man who is not going to enter the moment unless asked. Hollis nodded once at Sam. Sam nodded once back. The noon meal went on around the table in a quiet that took 2 full breaths to unstiffen, and then unstiffened in the way of a Saturday noon meal at the crossroads, because there were 9 men at the table and bread to pass. Hollis Ware left after the meal. He was at the table the following Tuesday. He did not bring a paper. He nodded once at Della on the way in. He nodded once at Sam at the near end of the bench. He sat in his place. He ate his supper. He paid his board. By the spring, he had married the freight clerk's sister at the crossroads, the way Della had said he would. Sam Tilden was at the kitchen porch on the Sunday after the noon meal at first gray light, sanding the new board on the shed. Della came out at 5:15 with the kettle. Sam, Della. She set the kettle on the porch rail. She did not lean against it. I would like you to come and sit at the kitchen at the end of the day on Sundays from now on. Not at the long table, at the kitchen, after the boarders have gone up. I would like you to drink a cup of coffee with me at the kitchen table at the end of the day. I'm not asking past that. I'm asking the cup of coffee. That suits. He went on sanding. She went back inside. The kettle ticked on the porch rail in the cool of the first gray, and the kitchen window caught the warm, pale gold of the morning, and Della stood at the kitchen block with her hand on the wood and did not let her face do anything for a moment, because there was no one to see it. He came to the kitchen at the end of the day on Sundays. The cup hung on the peg beside hers. The cedar pry tools stayed on the shelf inside the kitchen door beside her own tools. By the second month of Sundays, he had built a small, narrow bench at the kitchen table beside her chair, because the chair he had been sitting in across from her was the one her mother had kept for company, and he had said one Sunday, without looking up from the bench he was sanding, that he did not want to be company at her kitchen on Sundays past the autumn. And she had said, without looking up from the cup she was drying, that she had not been planning to count him as company past the autumn either. On a clear, bright afternoon in October, with the cottonwoods at the lane all the way gold, Sam Tilden came up from the back of the shed with a small folded paper in his hand, and he laid it on the kitchen table at the place where her cup sat. The paper was a deed to a half-acre at the back of the section that ran behind her property, which he had bought from old Mr. Beadle with the money he had saved from carpenter work at the freight house and at the Marleys through August and September. "I have a place to bring beside yours," he said. "I'm asking what you will let me do." "I will let you do it," Della said. She did not say more than that. He did not ask her to. They were married at the small chapel at the crossroads on a clear, cool afternoon in late October, with the cottonwoods at the lane all the way gold. Toby Penrose stood up with them. Hollis Ware did not come and sent a wagon load of fresh-cut pine boards from the freight house as a wedding gift, which was the most graceful thing Della had ever known a man to do. Sam Tilden moved his canvas roll and his hand plane and his chisel and his tin cup out of the back room and into the front room of the boarding house on the second week of November, and the back room went back to being the smallest room in the house, and Della rented it to the next decent passing hand who could pay or work, and the boarding house kept on as it had kept on, with 5 at the long table at supper time and Sam at the new short bench at the kitchen table on Sundays, and the second tread of the porch step nailed flat for the rest of their lives. This was the story of Della and Sam, the boarding house keeper and the drifter who came up her lane at the supper bell. Tell me in the comments if you enjoyed this one. We are always glad you came to listen.